Okay, Clive, you are live and ready to go.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, fellow councillors, officers, members of the public. Welcome to this December meeting of North Norfolk District Council. I'd like to start by a very short chairman's communication. I mentioned last time that I have sponsored some Cly calling events in January, February and March being run by Norfolk Wildlife Trust. I'm now in the process of communicating that to all the people who came to our civic reception a year or so ago, and various other people to try and drum up support for that. I think last time I asked members to have a look at it. It is something that Norfolk Wildlife Trust are doing in these terrible times, and is entirely obviously virtual, but there are some very good speakers, and it is, I think, well worth having a look at. So that really is my only communication at the moment. So I will move on and ask our leader, Councillor Sarah Butikova, to give leaders' announcements. Over to you, Councillor Butikova.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman, and good evening, members and members of the public watching at home. As the government reviews its advice regarding families getting together over the Christmas period, and in advance of tomorrow's announcement of the reviewing of the current tier arrangements, I wish to update members as to the ongoing work of the District Council in respect of COVID. Whilst local cases and rates per 100,000 population did rise in the district during late November to a maximum number of 95 cases on the 21st and 26th of November, a large part of the increase in cases was attributable to one particular setting. Numbers have since fallen back to 60 cases, 57.2 per 100,000 in the district in the 7 days to the 10th of December, against an England average of 184 cases per 100,000. North Norfolk is currently rated as the 309th lowest authority area out of 314 local authority areas in England, and long may it stay that way, I'm sure we all agree. Our cumulative total of cases since March until the 10th of December now stands at 792 confirmed infections, giving a total number of cases of 755.5 cases per 100,000, compared to an England average of 2,875.8 per 100,000. This means that since the beginning of the pandemic, North Norfolk has had one of the lowest rates of infection per 100,000 population of any local authority area in the country, 310th out of 314 local authority areas in England. The total number of COVID deaths in North Norfolk at the 10th of December since the pandemic started in March of this year is sadly 64 deaths, giving a rate of 61 per 100,000 compared to an England average of 108 deaths per 100,000. On this indicator, North Norfolk doesn't fare as well as a number of other authorities, being the 64th lowest local authority area in England, but that is potentially due to our older demographic. Across all these indicators, North Norfolk has continued to be incredibly fortunate, as it has been consistently within the lowest 10% of all 314 local authorities in England for cases, and the lowest 25% of deaths. But I'm sure we all agree we can't be complacent now as we see cases rise across the country. As a council, we are working hard to maintain this position through our actions in continuing to share government and local messages around hands, face and space, and protecting ourselves, protecting others, and of course protecting the NHS and Norfolk. We have also, since the 2nd of December, had a team of 6 COVID support officers in our towns, working in partnership with colleagues in Norfolk Police and Trading Standards and our own environmental health team. They have visited business premises to offer advice about the regulations relating to Norfolk's designation and undertaken a number of enforcement visits. We also continue our programme of fogging public conveniences, car park ticket machines and children's playgrounds in partnerships with colleagues. As of last Friday, our Economic Growth and Revenues team had made payments of local restriction support grants to 2,781 businesses, totalling in excess of 4 million, representing over 75% of eligible businesses. This figure was more than 3 times the amount paid out by any other local authority in Norfolk, and meant that in percentage terms of eligible businesses, North Norfolk was third behind Breckland and Broadland districts at 79 and 76 of eligible businesses respectively. The teams are now developing the application process for the additional restrictions grant scheme to be launched early in the new year. This was a conscious decision by the council, recognising that the focus of many businesses at this time would be on Christmas trade. The council has also written to all businesses which might be eligible for the government's wet-led grant scheme for licensed premises, which do not sell food and have therefore had to close under the Tier 2 designation. On the 15th of December, Sport England announced a National Leisure Recovery Fund for local authority sports and leisure centres, and officers are working with our leisure provider, Everyone Active, to submit a proposal for support through this programme. COVID testing facilities will continue to be provided on District Council car parks in Cromer and Fakenham over the Christmas period, so that local people do not have to travel long distance to access testing sites. Our internal gold civil contingency arrangements continue to meet twice a week to develop and agree our local response to partnership activity across Norfolk, as agreed through the Norfolk Resilience Forum and public health protection and engagement arrangements to coordinate our response and maximise the collective benefit of partnership working across Norfolk with respect to this ongoing situation. Since Monday, a leaflet has been dropping through letterboxes across the district with helpline numbers, not just for us and our offices here, but our strategic partners in Norfolk. People who have never needed to ask for help before are struggling through no fault of their own, and many are too embarrassed to ask for help. We want to make sure we are reaching out to them and providing as much information and support as possible to them. We are also continuing to work with health partners around the planning of the delivery of vaccination programmes across Norfolk, with the first GP primary care delivery being at Fakenham Surgery from yesterday, and with large-scale vaccination centre arrangements anticipated being in place from early in the new year. We therefore continue to urge our residents and businesses to adhere to government guidance, advice to stay at home, protect lives and protect the NHS, and in so doing protect themselves, protect others and protect Norfolk, so that where possible we can get back to as normal a way of life as soon as possible in 2021. In other news, our 2 new climate change officers have joined the team, and many staff have taken advantage of their volunteering days to join our tree planting teams in the last couple of weeks. Thank you to all of you who have taken part in that, and to the members of the public who came along to Holt Country Park last Friday and Saturday to collect trees to plant in their own gardens. That was a great success, even if the weather was a little damp and miserable at times, as I'm sure Councillor Lloyd can attest to, as he was there with the team. This has been a difficult year by anyone's standards, and I would like to thank everyone at the council, officers and members, for the tremendous effort and dedication they have shown in delivering for our residents. May 2021 be kinder to us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bitikova. That takes us on to declarations of interest. Does anybody have a declaration in reference to tonight's agenda? No? Thank you. And then we move on to apologies for absence. Emma, do you have anybody?
I've just received 2 apologies, Chairman, from Councillor Tim Adams and Councillor Georgie Perry-Warnes. Oh, and Councillor Cushing wishes to make.
Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I received a text message from Councillor Pearce to say that he's unable to access the meeting owing to technical difficulties with his iPad, which have been raised with Democratic Services before. But anyway, I think we have to mark him as an apology.
Thank you, Councillor Cushing.
We are trying to resolve that issue at the moment, so hopefully he will be in shortly. But
Okay, thank you. That takes us on to item 5, which are the minutes of the last meeting, which was on the 18th of November. Minutes on page 1. Has anybody got any comments on the minutes? I'll go through page by page. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Page 12. And finally, page 13. And I'll stop there. I once did start going through the rest of the agenda, but I've learnt my lesson there. So. Okay, everybody happy if I sign the minutes as a correct record? Thank you. That takes us to item 6, items of urgent business. I believe we have none. Public questions or statements. I believe we have none. And that takes us to item 8, which is appointments to committees, subcommittees, working parties and panels. So I'll hand over to Councillor Butikova to start, followed by Councillor Cushing and Councillor Rest. Councillor Butikova.
Thank you, thank you, Chairman. I've already circulated my changes to Democratic Services. We've had a couple of appointments to the GRAC, the Governance Risk and Audit Committee, Councillor Fisher and Councillor Butikova, Mr. And we've also had Councillor Fisher and Councillor Andrew Brown appointed to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 3 appointments to make. 2 for the Policy Planning Committee, which is Councillor Pearce and Councillor Mancini Boyle. And I will now be attending the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rest.
Thank you, Chairman. We have no changes at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so that takes us on then to item 9, which is portfolio reports, pages 19 to 62. And we start with Councillor Sarah Butikova.
Thank you. I don't think there's really very much to say on these reports. I'm very happy to take any questions. The only thing I would point out to members is that one of my reports talks about the census, and I have asked that there's a members briefing on that early in the new year. I think you may already have received the invitation, basically so that you are able to help your residents if anyone asks you any questions about it. I just think that we should be as informed as possible on it. So I've arranged for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any questions for Councillor Butikova, please? Yes, Councillor Cushing, I can see.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last Thursday, the Development Committee approved an outline planning application for 950 new homes in my ward in North Fakenham. As you're aware, this proposed development is one of the largest in the district and crucial to meeting the future demand for new homes in North Norfolk. When the vote was taken, amazingly, Councillor Lloyd, portfolio holder for Environmental Services, and Councillor Toy, portfolio holder for Planning, voted against the proposal. Given that this proposal was the culmination of 12 years of planning by council staff and the applicant, how can you explain that the two portfolio holders most responsible for this voted against it? How do you feel about those inconsistencies, and what action, if any, you're going to take with regard to it? And also, the matter of interest, do you actually support the planning application?
Thank you. Questions at this time should be about the papers that you have in front of you, my portfolio holder report. So I'll be very happy to provide you with a written answer to that. But just straight away, I would say to you that yes, actually, I do support that application. And I have worked very closely with Trinity to make sure that can be brought forward and delivered for the people of Fakenham, because I know it's been a long, long time in the waiting. So thank you.
I think
Mr. Chairman, if I may respond, if I may.
Councillor Cushing, it has been stated that it's not really the appropriate time, but if you respond quickly, Councillor
Well, I
Butikova
did,
will
Mr.
be
Chairman, I did
sending you
actually
a
check
written
that with
reply.
Democratic Services whether I could ask a question on this. Someone's given the understanding that that would be the case. All I simply to say is I'm glad that Councillor Butikova does support it, and it's a great shame that two of the portfolio holders actually don't, which I'm sure will be noted in Fakenham.
Thank
I
you.
think the only thing I would say to you on that, Councillor Cushing, is that each member, as you know, votes with their conscience and with what they believe to be right on each item on the agenda.
Thank you. So shall we move on, please, to...
Sorry, Chairman, we have Councillor John Rest would like to ask a
Oh,
question.
sorry, couldn't see you. Sorry, Councillor Rest.
Thank you, Chairman. Question to Councillor Butikova under her Cabinet Member for Executive Supports. Councillor, I just wondered, on the 7th of December 2020, Norfolk County Council prepared a draft Norfolk Strategic Infrastructure Delivery Plan. There are 91 pages and just over 17 subsections included. This authority, NNDC, is only mentioned by its logo and at the front. Only 3 of our towns, Fakenham, Bacton and North Walsham, are referred to. 2 of them are only in a single sentence. Can I please ask that this authority study the draft plan and satisfy themselves that they are comfortable with the amount of reference that NNDC have received? Thank you.
I now
Thank you,
have...
Thank you,
Sorry,
Councillor.
Councillor Butikova.
So, firstly, I owe Councillor Cushing an apology. I can see that the Democratic Services Officer has corrected at me, and it says that people can be asked any questions with not just on the written reports. So I apologise, but I will let you have a written answer to the rest of your question. The second point, going back to your question, Councillor Rest, I think it's important that we look at this report in the context that this is written. This is a report that is looking for the key infrastructure projects to deliver future growth for the whole of Norfolk. And closer examination will reveal, and you've obviously done that in quite some detail yourself, you will have seen that a lot of it relates to very major infrastructure projects, such as dualling of the A47 in places, the A11, work on railway network, those sorts of things, and in areas where we're going to see a lot of high housing development. Both of those, obviously, we don't have a lot of in North Norfolk, but what we are making sure are included in this are things that will interest you and councillors in the Fakenham area, and obviously residents in the Fakenham areas. And that is some of the road infrastructure surrounding that development that's just been discussed, to make sure that that is appropriate for that location. We're looking at some support for the highways around North Walsham for the future delivery of housing in that location. And also this report or this plan was responsible for some of the work at the Bacton gas terminal. So yes, we will make sure, and we will keep revising, and we will keep pushing. And if there are any more proposals or ideas anyone of this committee council has, we'd be very happy to push them forward, because we regularly discuss this document at Norfolk leaders and chief executive meetings. I hope that answers your question.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Rest?
Yes, thank you, Leader. So can I then confirm that you are comfortable with the amount of coverage that NNDC are getting in this report?
I'm never confident that we've got enough coverage. We need to push for more all the time, and that's what we continue to do.
Okay, Councillor Rest. I now have Councillor Mancini Boyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At last December's full council, a Conservative motion was approved to incorporate the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of anti-Semitism into the Council's equality and diversity policy. Having checked with Democratic Services, I'm appalled to find that a year later this is still not being done. Indeed, I raised this some months ago with you, but still had no actions been taken. Can Councillor Butakova explain why this is not a priority for her, and what she has to say to members of the Jewish community in North Norfolk who are concerned that she does not take anti-Semitism seriously based on her lack of action? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So the first thing is, I would say to the Jewish community, I do take this extremely seriously. And actually, I have been contacted by some of them because they're grateful that this council is supporting that. I, like you, I'm not happy it's taken us so long. It needs to be done, but the team here have been absolutely flat out with the capacity issues related to COVID, and the team working from home, etc. But it is on our agenda, it is being pushed up the agenda, and it will be completed soon. And I will come back to you with a written answer about when you can expect that, so that you've got an actual date when you can hold us to.
Thank you, Councillor Butakova. Councillor Gerard Mancini Boyle, are you happy with that?
Thank you for that, Councillor Butakova. I'd just like to point out actually that COVID only came onto our agendas in March, and this was some months before that. I do believe it should have been dealt with a lot sooner. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I can't see anybody else. Have I missed anybody, Emma? Oh, Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Another question for Councillor Butakova, if I may. Is the leader aware that the term officer bashing is being used in councillor conversations? No names, no factual, but it has been witnessed. And would she agree with me and the Conservative group that regardless of the context, the use of the term officer bashing in council conversation is not acceptable or a respectful term, especially in light of your group's motion at the November full council? Would she agree with me that it should be condemned by us all?
Absolutely. There should be no officers work extremely hard, and I think they deserve our full support at all times. And I would not be happy to see and if anyone has any examples, then I would ask them to bring them to me so that we can take action against that, because that should be a standards committee issue. We are here and we are all one team to work together.
Thank you, Councillor Butikova. Anybody else? Can't see anybody out of the 25 I can see. No. Okay, thank you. In that case, we will move on to the Cabinet Members' report for Coast, which is Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you can see, a very full operations report. I'm only too aware that Coastal Ward members receive non-stop queries in respect of their frontages. Therefore, I hope this update is helpful. I also hope inland members find it useful background information. A couple of thankfully less usual events recently that should be mentioned. Again, a UXB or UXO was found and detonated off Bacton. Quite often this happens. I had a little bit of experience of this when I had a trip out on the Sea Pauling lifeboat a few years ago. They were about to throw me into the water as dead Fred and got a message from Humber Coast Guard. So instead of being thrown out of the water, I was dumped on the beach where they went off to look at out for a UXB at, I think it was off Eccles. So unfortunately, there's still quite a lot of ordnance still in our seas. Sadly, we had to deal with the stranding of the sperm whale at Weybourne, together with environmental services. Again, events along our coast involves joint working, and I'm very proud that both teams cooperate so well. While sandscaping was shortlisted for more awards at both Flood and Coast and the APSE today, we were not overall winners. However, Kelly Fisher from CPE won the Most Inspirational Woman Award at Flood and Coast. We're very proud of her. And also, you may have heard that the Cromer boat was called out yesterday to rescue fishermen, and I'm delighted to say that our Assistant Coastal Engineer, Fiona, was there to bring the boat back up on the ramp. Good for her. Another inspirational woman. It's been a very busy autumn, despite the restrictions. The CPE board officers held our final 2020 virtual meeting yesterday. On behalf of us all, can I wish you all a very happy Christmas and a better new year. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Fitch-Tillett. Do I have any questions, please? No. There's a little anecdote a few years ago. At the Hill House in Haysborough, we had people staying who were dealing with munitions, which, as Councillor Fitch-Tillett says, appear regularly on our coast here. They've been here a day, and one of them said to me, "Where exactly is the church?" Which is a relatively small building, about 80 yards from where they were staying. Confidence. Right. No questions for Councillor Fitch-Tillett. Okay, that takes us on then to Cabinet Member for Leisure, Wellbeing and Culture, Councillor Gay.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It's not very long since we last reported to you, so I have nothing really to add here, except to thank Angie for wishing us all a better new year next year. I think we could all do with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gay. Any questions, please? Yes, Councillor Mancini-Boyle, I have.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I ask the councillor, are we looking to resurrect our successful community response calls that we had on the recent pandemic to call lonely, vulnerable constituents during these difficult times over Christmas?
Thank you. I'd just like to say I'm not aware that we do have such a programme in place at the moment, Councillor Mancini-Boyle. Our number has continued to respond to people who call us, But I suspect that's something we could look into, because perhaps some of us might like to volunteer to do that, as we did last time. So may I get back to you on that?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Thank you for that. I'm quite happy to volunteer as well.
Thank you, Councillor Mancini-Boyle. Well, here we have a message for us all. It's already being planned.
Indeed, I was one of the telephone companions as well, and I would be quite happy to continue that. So I think we need to watch this space, because it is being planned.
Me
Thank
too,
you.
Chairman.
Anybody else?
Thanks.
For
Chairman, I
Councillor
see
Gay?
Councillor Dixon and Councillor Fredericks have their hand raised.
Okay, Councillor Dixon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Gay, I note your report on the North Norfolk Sustainability Fund, focus on the community sustainability and well-being, but I also note that this administration recently refused a funding bid from Community Action Norfolk to support expansion of the various community volunteer groups around the district, who provide the most cost-effective grassroots support to the vulnerable in the district, especially during COVID-19. Yet at the September full council meeting, it agreed a resolution that the council supports the work of Community Action Norfolk and the various voluntary community groups, inviting them to apply for funding. In February, it similarly refused funding for community first responders, who are crucial in saving lives during poor ambulance response times. Isn't this good evidence of a council saying all the right, warm, comforting words, but failing to deliver the all-important action? So can the Cabinet member tell us more about these refusals to our accredited community partners, please?
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. At the moment, I think what I'd like to say about that is that these decisions do go to a panel. They go to a cross-party panel, and the panel does make its decision. As you know, the decisions are reported back to councillors so that they know. And absolutely nobody is prohibited from applying again or reshaping their applications. It's not a once in a lifetime thing, it's an ongoing fund. And if you would like me to send you further details on the thinking of the panel and its decision and how various cases were argued, I might perhaps be able to do that if it would be helpful. But I'm not convinced that it's a matter of only using warm and lovely words. I think the panel is dedicated to its task and tries to do it extremely fairly and carefully. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gay. I would like to take you up on that offer to supply details of particularly those two applications and any others which you think demonstrates the fairness that you speak about in the decision-making process for applications. So I look forward to seeing that in the future, near future.
I'll do my best, Councillor Dixon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. I now have Councillor Fredericks, I think.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. Councillor Gay, I was just wondering if you could flesh out the social subscribing service that we offer. I myself have used it many times and they've given my constituents help and advice, but I think, you know, it'd be helpful if you could just put a bit of more flesh on the bones, like casework and stuff like that. That'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fredericks. I did send out the report on the social prescribing service to all members in October, and 1 or 2 people have asked me for other copies, and I had some messages back from councillors about this. It is a valued service. There are 5 officers. At the moment, 3 of them are funded by the county council and 2 by our local surgeries network. So if anybody would like to have the report sent back to them again, I will do that. I'm also aware that we haven't had any kind of presentation on this service, so that might be something also to think about. Thank you, Councillor Fredericks.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions for Councillor Gay? No, thank you. So we move on now then to Cabinet Member for Housing and Benefits, which is Councillor Greg Hayman. Councillor Hayman.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Well, as Councillor Gay mentioned, it's not so long since we had a last full council meeting. Most of the things that I have in my report are updates on things that I reported to you previously. There's an awful lot of detail there, so if anyone's got any particular questions, please go ahead.
I can see Councillor Housden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to ask the portfolio holder about the position at Parklands at Pudding Norton. Firstly, I haven't been advised about the new home, the Green Homes grant, and I understand that the residents there have already been contacted, and given that I had a considerable amount of contact with them when there were problems with their electricity in summer 2019, I would like to have had the courtesy of notification that they were being contacted regarding the Green Homes grant. And supplementary to that, I understand that the offer from Barton Group was not pursued, which is probably very disappointing, but in an email on the 24th of August, there was detail and discussion about obtaining quotes for selling the site. And since then, I've not heard any more. So I just wondered if I could have an update on that, please.
Thank you. Well, it's a 2-part question. The first one on Parklands. I'm sorry that you weren't notified by officers. As I say, there is a real capacity issue with activity and focus on COVID. So normal service sometimes has slipped a little bit there, and I do apologise. There are occasions when individual local members aren't contacted, but because this is a scheme across the whole of North Norfolk, I think they probably, in their defence, assumed that letting us know that this scheme was available, that there would be implications across the whole of North Norfolk, rather than just being something that's very specific to one ward member's interest there. On your second question, I can't really answer that because it falls in the portfolio bailiwick of assets now. Eric, my colleague Eric, will be able to update you if there's anything more since then. It was previously under my bailiwick when I was portfolio holder for assets and commercialisation. It isn't any longer, and he might be able to update you better if there's anything pertinent to your question.
Thank you very much.
Okay, do I have any other questions? Can't see anybody. Okay, in which case we'll move on to Cabinet Member for Sustainable Growth, which is Councillor Richard Kershaw.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. And my report is before you. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Councillor Kershaw? Yes, I have Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Kershaw, during the month, as you know, I had to write to you to ask why businesses were still not receiving their grant payments weeks into the second lockdown. And I think this was probably for the second time businesses had to wait longer than neighbouring authorities to be paid. Now, the explanations ranged from that we have more SMEs than anyone else, which is true and mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, to wanting to see all the guidance before embarking on processing the grants. But I want to push you a little bit because I think those reasons are scarcely relevant. The whole thrust of helping our businesses is to pay these grants at speed. And if we have more businesses, why were not more officers put on the job? And why did we not start earlier? And if it was a guidance matter, what was it in the guidance that meant we couldn't make payments, but Breckland, Broadland, South Norfolk and Great Yarmouth were able to pay hundreds of thousands of pounds before we started, please?
Thank you, Councillor Baker. And I did receive your letter, and as you know, I replied within 36 hours. I think a leader has also touched on the amount of funding we have paid out. And even though we sometimes start off slower, you saw that we were now third, and we have actually paid out more money. We have more businesses and we have paid out those fees. If there's anything specific that you'd like to query me on, I'd be happy to receive a query from you and I'll reply in writing. Thank you.
No, that's fine. Thank you for the answer. I think you've just admitted that you were a little bit slower. Can I just then please implore, if we get into a situation where we have to pay grants again, we talked about wet-led payments next time, please, this time, let's get ahead. Let's make sure that we are the fastest authority in the district, because there is somewhat of a reputation that we have been a little bit slower than others, and I'm sure we don't want to have that again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Just to put you in the picture with the wetland Christmas support payments, they're being assessed and they are paid on this Friday, the 18th of December. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Kershaw, anybody else? No. In which case we move on then to Cabinet Member for Environmental Services, Climate Change and Environment, Councillor Nigel Lloyd.
Thank you, Chair. Our Leader of the Council has already mentioned the two new employees that we have on board, but as portfolio member, I would like to welcome them formally tonight. Nigel Stannett and Annie Samaisi will be part of the climate change team. They're both really well qualified and keen, have some great ideas, and already started putting this council onto a path to carbon neutrality. Last full council, I paid tribute to the environmental health team, and I'd like to do so again tonight. I'm sorry to bore members, but the team has been going out, working in partnership with the police in the evenings to visit various establishments that are open to ensure that they're compliant with COVID requirements. I'm sure all members would agree that this sort of thing is possibly why we have such low, or contributes to why we have such low numbers of infection in North Norfolk. They work extremely hard, and they also take a huge number of queries from the public and from businesses too. And I'd just like to pay tribute to them tonight, because they go above and beyond. But I'm happy to take questions on my report if there are any.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd. Do I have any questions? Oh yes, Councillor Mancini Boyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two very small questions, and I will be brief. I'm pleased to see the drive forward with the tree planting initiative. I myself recently joined residents of Dillon on a tree planting exercise organised by Anne-Marie Gedge and Colin Brown. Do you think this scheme will be continued in the future once the total has been reached? And my second question to you, Councillor, is we should be aiming higher with our renewable energy generations of between 10, 15 to 20%. with new planning applications, what are you doing in conjunction with planning department to come up with a new renewable energy strategy? Because I think I've mentioned before that I think that these are far too low. And I think you were on the same meeting I was, that we were all quite appalled how low they were. I understand that builders have to make profits and what have you, but my feeling is that we should be looking forward to our next generations and trying to do as much as we possibly can to make energy efficient houses more normal, especially affordable. Thank you.
Yeah, on question one, there are a number of tree planting initiatives. We had one today up at Holt Country Park, for example. There will be others. We've got a large number of schemes. We've had good feedback from the public, from schools and parishes, and we're working through those schemes. They'll continue, and we will meet our target, and I hope to exceed the 110,000 trees. Yeah, so all members can get involved. There'll be more and more events published, and please come along and join us. They're good days out, actually. The second part of the question, yeah, I totally agree with your sentiments. In fact, the Fakenham application that was mentioned earlier, I did indeed vote against it because the amount of renewable energy that the developer had offered was only 10%. I thought that was absolutely appalling. The minimum for that size of application is 20%. And I'm portfolio holder for climate change, and I will vote against these things. But as for working with planners, really a lot hinges on when we get out the new draft plan that's currently being worked on. There are a very large number of new initiatives embedded within that plan, which I think would certainly have prevented that application going through in Fakenham. By the way, it also was only offering 16.5% affordable homes. The next application we heard, just up the road from there, was offering 45%. Now, you know, in my book and in my conscience, I believe that I did the right thing. And I know I'm partially answering Councillor Cushing's question earlier, but I don't get whipped by my party. There are no pre-meetings with the planning department within my party. We all turn up and vote the way we feel we have to, and I will defend that. And I wouldn't want to be part of a party that predetermines applications. And so I hope you realise that that's the case. And if it happens again, I may well vote that way too. Does that answer your question, Councillor Mancini?
Yes, it does. And just to assure you, I certainly don't believe that you'd be whipped at all with any of these planning applications.
Right, have I got anybody else?
I think Councillor Housden, yeah. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I'm slightly on the same tack as Councillor Mancini Boyle. In the context of climate change, I find it very strange that since I became a district councillor, I've had planning applications in my ward where the planning office and conservation officer are refusing to accept the suggestion of ground source heat pumps in favour of oil-fired central heating. And I think this is quite ludicrous in this day and age. I wonder if you can explain why we currently have this conflict and what's going to be done to change it.
I think your question is best. I'm going to answer your question, but it's actually all wrapped up in planning law, of which, you know, that's not my portfolio. But I'm repeatedly being told by our planning department that many of the climate change aspects that you've just referred to are not material considerations within the planning field. That actually drives me bonkers. We're living in 2020, we are in a climate emergency, and it's just not good enough. And the government should be doing much more. It talks about lots of stuff and spending lots of money, but we're not seeing any of that filtering through into policy. You know, houses can be built with much, much higher efficiency levels than they currently are at the moment. But as long as developers can get away with minimum standards, that's exactly what is happening. Now, the two cases you just referred to, I don't know the answer to that. And really, if you can write to me afterwards, Councillor Housden, I'd like to know what the planning application number was, and I'll look it up and give you a written answer on that. But yeah, I'm as appalled as you if what you were saying it occurred. That's just not good enough in my book.
Well, yes, thank you for that response. I find it absolutely appalling, to be perfectly honest, and I'm determined in my role as a district councillor to try and change the situation. But thank you very much, and I will write to you.
I think we all find that kind of thing unacceptable, Councillor Housden.
Yes,
Right, then any further questions? No, that takes us on then to Councillor Seward, Cabinet Member for Resources.
Good evening, members, and thank you, Chairman. You have my report in front of you, so there's nothing I wish to add to it, but I will take this opportunity to answer Councillor Housden's question around parklands, which he posed earlier. I don't know, Councillor Housden, if you're clairvoyant, but I actually was discussing this matter with the assets manager last week, where we were with parklands. The council, if it's minded to dispose of property, has a duty to seek to get the best value for, has the best value duty. The approach we're adopting is seeking to do that. And what I have asked the assets manager to do is to contact you as the local member, to update you where we are, and to explain how we tend to move forward with the disposal of this asset. So I hope that that will answer your question. Thank you.
Yeah, it does in part. I'm just quite disappointed because I do understand that the offer last year was in the region of £840,000, which at the time I would have thought was good value.
I think this is a matter of commercial sensitivity. I think if Councillor Housden wishes to continue with this conversation, I think that needs to be done either in private business or in a written answer. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Batch, I will do that. Okay, Mr. Seaward, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Housden. Anybody else?
Councillor Tom Fitzpatrick has a raised hand.
Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's a question for Councillor Seaward. Obviously, since I've been a councillor, we've times have been difficult and we've been husbanding resources and making savings. And recently, this leaflet has come out to all the households in North Norfolk about COVID, which is very, very laudable. But it's also gone out to people in Brancaster, people in Great Yarmouth, and so on. So I'm just wondering what the cost of delivering all these extra leaflets are and how that actually fits into the sustainability criteria of the council. It'd be quite good to get the cost, and also to know if in sending them out to the good burghers of Kings Lynn and West Norfolk and Great Yarmouth, if it's actually left people in this district without the leaflets and the information they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Well, clearly, those leaflets were designed for the residents of North Norfolk. I'm not aware that anybody's not received one. And if they've gone outside the district, well, then, of course, that is inappropriate. If you want to know what the cost of this exercise was, I can arrange for a written reply to be given to you. But as the leader has said earlier, I do think it's very important in these challenging times that people are informed of contact points and where to go for advice and support. And indeed, I noticed in your question that you recognise that. Thank you.
Councillor Black, sorry,
Sorry,
Officer
can I just
Stu
come back
Black,
very
would you
quickly,
like to
Chairman?
come
No,
in?
thanks. Thanks, Councillor Seward. I'm quite happy not to get a written response on the cost, because I think that would take away officer time, but I think it's important in the future. I mean, given that these were put out via the Royal Mail, that it's targeted better in future. Thanks for that. Thank you.
I take your point, Councillor.
Mr. Blatch, would you like to comment?
So this was a mass mail distribution according to postcode distribution, and I understand that we did offer or instruct Royal Mail to distribute on the basis of a number of pre-described postcodes. My understanding is that where there is district boundary issues, that in terms of cost, there may have been some issues around routing of Royal Mail vehicles at a local level. We have been advised this afternoon that perhaps some of those leaflets have been distributed, I would say, beyond what I would say adjoining communities, such that we are making inquiries around that this afternoon. So we have the commission that we had with Royal Mail was that we would deliver to all 55,000 households in North Norfolk, and there was a small volume of additional leaflets printed to address those issues at a local level. If we wanted to fix only for the 55,000 in North Norfolk, there was an additional cost, because we would have had to have specified the following end of the three figures at the end of the postcode, as well as the NR or PE prefix figure. So the detail the issue has been raised with us this afternoon, and we're trying to get more information as to exactly what has happened.
Thank you, Mr. Blatch. Councillor Fitzpatrick, you happy to wait for your written reply?
I'm quite happy not to have a written reply. I think it would take officer resources that could be spent on better things, and I'm more than happy with the replies I've had, both from portfolio holder and the chief executive. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Anybody else?
We have Councillor Dixon.
Councillor Mancini Boyle. Yeah.
Sorry, I believe Councillor Dixon was first.
Can't see Councillor Dixon. Sorry, Councillor Dixon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Seward, can you tell us in round figure terms what the 25th of November Income and Savings Workshop has produced towards closing the gaps in the medium-term financial strategy? And if you don't have that figure yet, can you tell full council when at least you will have an estimate, so that we can have confidence that we will not be looking into a substantial black hole in the budgets of future years, please?
Thank you, Councillor Dixon, for your question. Clearly, when the medium-term strategy comes out, further information will be there on that. I just make two observations. In terms of the council's budgets over the years moving forward, I've often seen deficits in years moving forward, and then when we actually come to the year in question, those deficits are no longer there. If you go back to years 2011, 12 or 13, look at those figures, you'll actually see it. So, I mean, I think I do make that point generally, but I do make another point. I think the situation is getting more difficult, and one of the challenges that we face as a local authority, and all local authorities face it, is uncertainties in terms of the formulas that are going to be used for central government support in future years. When I come to the budget meeting, I will have to refer to that again. And in terms of forecasting and arriving at clear positions about where we're going in future, it is very difficult. So the medium-term strategy report will give you further information. We will give you what information we can, but given the uncertainties that we face going forward, until we can get more precise indications from central government over what central government support's going to be there, to actually accurately and precisely say how you address certain deficits in future years, it's an impossible exercise. Thank you.
Councillor Dixon, are you happy with that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will just make some observation though, and whilst I accept the uncertainties is always an issue, that has always been the case. I note your optimism, if that's perhaps the right word, in terms of how in the past we have had forecast deficits, and come the actual year we have managed to balance our books. But I'm sure you will recognise, as will most of us, I think, that much of the low-hanging fruit that existed in the years that you mention will have already been picked, and it becomes more of a challenge when those higher when the higher fruit needs to be picked. We need far better preparation in order to safely do so, and I'm mindful that the current year and next year doesn't perhaps present the same kind of threat as the years after. And it is, I think, a well-recognised fact that for those more difficult to pick fruit, you do need a much longer run-up time. And it is that run-up time and the preparation for that which I think is all important and very different to the years that existed, you know, around the 2011, 12, 13 and so forth. So the challenge, I believe, is not to be underestimated. Thank you.
Can I say that challenging though this year was, certainly as a portfolio holder, I started much earlier than I would normally do in talking to officers about where we were. And I'm certainly well aware next year that almost as soon as the financial year starts, I'm going to have to start thinking and planning and talking to officers about the future year on from that, because for all the reasons, and interesting way you've put it, Councillor Dixon, these things are going to become more challenging.
Thank you. Councillor Mancini-Boyle, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be very brief. It seems to me this letter drop we've just done, it just seemed, just an observation. We've recently had our refuse picked up, and they left a leaflet giving us details of when our bins will be collected. Surely it would have been prudent to put the relevant information on that rather than do a secondary letter drop. It's just an observation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have anybody else?
Chairman, if I could just say that we are limited to 30 minutes for members' questions. So if I could suggest, as we get to the last two reports, that perhaps members who haven't spoken yet ask questions, because we've had several members asking repeat questions. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us on to Cabinet Member for Organisational Resources, and that is Councillor Lucy Shires.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members. I apologise for my slightly nasally speaking at the moment. There are three reports in front of you, and they're very well detailed. If you have any questions, I will take them now happily. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Shires. Do we have any questions? It's rightly been pointed out that time is now fairly tight. Do we have any questions for Councillor Shires?
I see Councillor Vincent Fitzpatrick has a hand raised.
Okay, Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Shires. Yeah, I read your reports with interest, and of course that's given rise to a couple of questions. I note in your reports the licensing for Microsoft Office 365, and you mentioned the use of Teams in particular. I think that's great going forward, because Teams is a really great product. However, I'd like to ask, has the work in the licensing been finalised? And secondly, what are the anticipated cost savings from piggybacking on the back of county IT licensing?
Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. You were slightly breaking up, but I gather that that was mostly around the 365 licensing.
Yeah, if you want, I can repeat the specific questions. One, has the work on the licensing been concluded and finalised? Secondly, it's mentioned that we're piggybacking on the county IT. So what cost savings is piggybacking giving the district council, please?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. As far as I'm aware, the licensing, the new licensing is fully complete. I'm not entirely sure what I am able to discuss about the contract and if it's commercially sensitive at all. Can I take some advice on that?
Mr. Kelly is available to respond, and he has put his camera on. He would be better advised than myself, I believe, if Sean is comfortable with that. Thank you.
Chairman, councillors, thanks very much. The contract has just been signed, and I mean just been signed in the last 5 minutes by me. I'm actually on leave at the moment, so I was able to do that while this meeting was on. But yes, the negotiations have been completed. In the end, Microsoft were able to offer a better deal through our existing software supplier than we achieved through County, primarily because, and that was to the tune of an average of £8,000 per annum saving over the 3 years of the contract. We were able to do that because the County agreement with Microsoft at the moment is nearly a year through its 3-year contract. So we would only attract the discount for the remaining 2 years, 3 months. But with our own agreement, we were able to get a full 3-year discount. Although the discount is slightly less in the initial 2 years, over the 3 years of the agreement, we end up £8,000 a year better off.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Does that answer your question, Councillor Fitzpatrick?
Yeah, that answers my question, which, if I may, I could proceed on to my second question. This actually is about the report from November, which is not all that long ago, really. And it mentioned work to change the council's online payments gateway to gov.pay, and that is approaching completion. 3 parts to this question. 1, has that work been completed? 2, what are the anticipated savings per annum from this? And thirdly, how are these savings being achieved? Is it transactional? Is it staff time? I'm just trying to understand the driver behind the savings.
Right.
May I suggest, Clive, that Chair, that Councillor Fitzpatrick, because he is breaking up so terribly, we can't hear him.
It's awful.
If he could please present a written question so that Councillor Shires and Officer Kelly can answer him. I'm so sorry, but we can't understand what he's saying.
Okay, Councillor Fitzpatrick, I can hear you some of the time. Obviously, other members can't hear you. Could you put this in writing, please, and we'll deal with it?
I've plugged in a microphone and headset. Can anyone hear me better now?
A little bit. Yes, a little bit, but it's still a bit difficult for some members, obviously. So I think it would be best satisfied if you put this in writing and we can get you a detailed answer as quickly as possible. Would that be satisfactory?
Sorry, Councillor Fitzpatrick, I think you've got a mute on or something on your mic because we heard you and then you went off. But if you would email me your full question, I will get you a written response.
Actually, I'd much prefer to ask the questions at the meeting.
I think Mr. Kelly is available to answer this question. He does have his hand raised, Chair.
Okay. Mr. Kelly, over to you.
I'm afraid I can't give a detailed breakdown in terms of the actual total of the savings because many of the savings are transactional based. So that depends on how many payments we take and how many don't. There is a saving per transaction. I don't have the exact figure, but it is a saving on what we currently pay to Capita. In addition, we won't need the £11,000 a year software licensing for the Capita Gateway software when we've completed the work. It's not actually live yet. It was delayed by work for COVID and work for the COVID forms, grant forms, and for the uniform go live, which have taken a large amount of resource recently. But we are in the final stages of testing and intending to go live in the very near future. So in addition, recent changes to legislation, for instance, the Capita software, we've had to pay additional sums each year to have compliance with W3C accessibility requirements, and with the recent changes for the 3D secure online payment securities, which have averaged £12,000 each. So on top of the £11,000 per annum licensing, we've had to pay a total of £30,000 in the last 18 months. Gov.pay is already 3D secure compliant, and it is also W3C accessibility compliant as well, so we'll avoid having to fund that work as well. I will have to ask my colleagues in finance to work up a model in terms of the actual figures generated, but that will be an estimate based on the number of transactions.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Councillor Fitzpatrick, I mean, that's the best answer we can get at the moment because of the reasons given. So could I ask you to make sure you do put it in writing and the detailed reply can be put together?
No, I'm happy with what Mr. Kelly has said so far, and he said he'll provide some supplementary information. I'd like to move on to a question about the Citizens app.
Councillor Fitzpatrick, you are actually only entitled to one question, but we are running out of time. So can we make this?
Sorry. Okay, I'll make this a very quick question. What are the facilities provided by the app, and what is the anticipated user base? I.e., how many distinct unique users are we expecting?
I'm sorry, Councillor Stockton. I thought we were only allowed one question at a time.
One question, and I have put that to Councillor Fitzpatrick, and
Absolutely.
I'll put it again.
Yeah.
We are only allowed one question, and we are running out of time.
And Councillor
So again,
Rest.
Councillor Fitzpatrick, can you please put this in writing, and we will make sure that it is dealt with. Thank you.
A point of information, Mr. Chairman. Is that one question per portfolio holder or per portfolio holder report?
One question per member.
Sorry, when you say per member.
Can we move on now, please?
No, sorry,
Fitzpatrick. I don't want to suppress
Mr. Chairman,
what you're saying,
could you please?
Can we move on, please?
Could I have an answer to my question, please? Are you saying that a member of the council may only ask one question during the portfolio?
No, one question per portfolio holder. You've tried to ask three for this portfolio holder. Yeah. So, Councillor Fitzpatrick, can we leave it there, please, and move on?
I think Councillor Rest wants to speak, Clive.
Yeah, Councillor Rest.
Thank you, Chairman, and I promise I will keep it quick. Councillor Shires, on page 56 of your report, regarding the Fakenham Community Centre, there are 3 ward councillors representing Fakenham, and not one of us is aware of any building survey being carried out on this community centre. Again, we are not being informed on projects being carried out in our ward. I have checked my email diaries and I have no reference whatsoever about anything being done. Can you please advise as soon as possible what the work is for? What is the estimated cost? When was the survey commissioned and by whom? And can we be provided with a copy of the survey? And just finally, a plea that the ward members are involved at the start of projects that are in their ward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rest.
Absolutely, Councillor Rest. I will speak to officers and get that in writing for you within 7 days. I am disappointed if you haven't been consulted, because I know that the communication is something that we are working on improving and has been improving. But if you're happy for a written response, I would gladly do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Could I just ask you to copy in Councillor Punchard and Councillor Cushing in on that as well, please? Thank you.
Absolutely, Councillor Rest.
Thank you. Anybody else for Councillor Shires before we move on?
Yeah.
Councillor Punchard.
Councillor Punchard, can't see you, Jeremy, sorry.
It's okay. Just to add to John's point, really for Councillor Shires, that not only am I a local ward member, I'm the representative for Fakenham Community Centre and had no awareness of this. And if COVID is going to be used as an answer, I don't see that's credible in this case, I'm afraid, for the sake of being copied in on an email chain. Thank you.
Yep, I've noted your point. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the point is well taken, that ward members need to be kept better informed sometimes. Right, thank you. Can we now move on to the last of the portfolio reports, which is Cabinet Member for Planning and Enforcement, which is Councillor Toy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members. I was going to say some congratulations to the teams that have pulled on some amazing work to do with uniform and the two recent committees that we had that went on the planning policy and the development committee that went on for a long while, where the officers that produced the reports for that were congratulated on the quality of their work. I will pass comment to save us going round again about why I voted a particular way. I find that quite an interesting question, because I thought I was allowed to go into a debate and listen to it and then make a decision as I felt. And actually the decision I came to was very much the same as Councillor Lloyd. I didn't feel that we were delivering the best for Fakenham. Not that it should be delivered for Fakenham. I don't expect to be told how I should be voting before I go in. I'm allowed to make that decision whilst I'm there. And even though that's my portfolio, and I have the utmost respect for the officers and the excellent work they do, I'm still entitled to my opinion. And my opinion was the same as Councillor Lloyd's, that it was not the best that I felt we could do. And in fact, I have here a challenge that I will be talking to the officers in planning for my understanding and to see where we can move this forward based on the other questions that have been raised this evening. They do viability reports, and those viability reports are essentially to see if it's viable for the person building or the developer to make money. My question is, if the site doesn't deliver what we want in terms of the climate emergency and the affordable homes, is it viable? And so I already have those challenges to take forward. So hopefully that has helped to answer those questions for Councillor Cushing. And I would be happy to discuss that with him. As he knows, we have had discussions before, and I'm more than happy to discuss that. And of course, you have my portfolio report, for which I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Toy. You are actually breaking up a bit as well, but I think we got the point.
Thank you.
Councillor Cushing, and then we must really move on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't disagree with the right of any member in the development committee to vote as their conscience dictates. That's not the point I was making. The point I was making is that we have two members of that committee who are cabinet members who ultimately are empowered to have an influence on any applications, certainly major applications that come through. That's why I just find it rather puzzling in the meeting itself that given the long fermentation of that proposal of about 12 years, which I know Councillor Toy is relatively like me, new on the council, but certainly it's been there a long time, probably initiated under a previous Liberal regime, if my numbers are right in terms of the year. The point it's making, actually, you're in a position to influence that, and it becomes very strange that when you get a major plank of policy being debated in a committee, that you get two of the cabinet members voting in the opposite to its implementation. That was the point I was making.
I think the point is taken, and obviously that's for discussion elsewhere at some point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Pearce.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's now been over 3 months since the High Court case, which resulted in NNDC losing some 37 low-cost affordable housing on the Clire Road development due to the Section 106 loss, which is still, I think, totally unacceptable. How much public money was actually spent here, if we could be told, and we still not have been informed of why this happened? This is very important, as the public need to know what has happened totally and what we're going to do about it so that it doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Sorry, that was quite quickly, Councillor Pearce. And so is that reference to a particular point in my report? If you could do that for me, thank you. Because, again, with the communications this evening, I had difficulty catching up.
I was under the impression, as to council, that I could ask the portfolio member a question on his portfolio. Your report was very brief, and I was asking a question appertaining to your position as being a portfolio holder for planning and enforcement. And surely to find out what has happened to a court order, why we lost 37 low-cost homes, is within your remit. Thank you.
It is. Councillor Pearce, I didn't hear the question fully because of the communications issues tonight, and it came through very quickly. I did not get your question fully, and that's why I've asked you to repeat it.
I think at this point, because both Councillor Pearce and Councillor Toy, we are struggling to hear you. I think at this point, this is exactly what we must do in writing. So if Councillor Pearce has a query about a loss of some houses due to a court or due to a court action, please put it in writing to Councillor Toy with the detail, the planning application number, and I'm sure it will be resolved. But it's not going to be resolved tonight now because the communication is difficult. Can we do that, Councillor Pearce, please?
Well, first of all, Mr. Chairman, I understand what you're saying. And as you well know, I was late joining the meeting because I do have keyboard problems, which has been running over several weeks. And I hope to have this sorted out quite quickly. If it's okay, I will put it through writing. I would like, obviously, to apologise if Councillor Toy hasn't heard my question, of which is something that I'm not responsible for. But at the same time, I think it's important enough. But if you don't want to hear it again, then I will put it in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right, I've just had, there has been a message from Mr. Blatch to say that that is in process, that the report is now being reviewed and there will be an answer very early in the new year.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. I will still do as you've requested and put it all in writing. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so let's move on, please, now to item 10, which is recommendations from Cabinet. Fees and charges, delegated authority under section 151, etc. I think here I'm going to turn to Mr. Blatch to go through this, to present this.
Not the fees and charges report. No, sorry, Chairman. No, I think that's Councillor Seward.
Okay. There's quite a lot in that paragraph, isn't there? Fees and charges, I presume, will be Councillor Seward.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this has been through the Cabinet. It's been through overview and scrutiny. It certainly provoked some questions. All I can say for those members that weren't involved, this is a report we normally bring this time of year, so that if there are any changes to fees and charges, there's ample time for officers to make the necessary arrangements. Some of these charges are determined by government, others are determined by this council, where we are able to determine things given the context and the situation we're in at the moment. We've tried as far as possible to freeze current charges moving into next year. I move the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Seward. The recommendation is in detail on page 63, that the Cabinet agree and recommend to full council, etc. So can we please have a proposer and a seconder?
I propose the recommendations, Chair.
Councillor Kershaw?
I'll second the recommendations, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And can we now put that to the vote?
I believe Councillor Dixon would like to ask a question.
Sorry, who would?
Councillor Dixon.
Councillor Dixon, I still can't see him anywhere. Councillor Dixon, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You probably note on the lower part of that item on our agenda that I would provide an oral update with respect to this item, which was heard by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee yesterday.
Yeah.
The point I really wanted to make was that whilst there was an interesting discussion and there are some issues perhaps to be followed up. They are not substantive issues that will affect the recommendation of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee with respect to this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. So we can now move to the vote. We have a proposer and seconder. Matt, are you ready with the voting?
Yep, I'll just bring up the poll now.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, has everyone had an opportunity to vote? I'm still about 5 members down, 3 members now.
Anybody else to vote?
Okay, I think that brings us up to almost all on the numbers. Okay, so that's 32 in favour and 3 abstentions.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so that recommendation is passed. So item 11, do you want to come back, Councillor Dixon?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to report that there are no recommendations from Overview and Scrutiny Committee from the meeting yesterday with respect to today's business.
Right, thank you, Councillor Dixon. So that means we can move on to item 12, which is the draft programme of meetings for 2021/22. Appendix A. Can I ask Officer Emma Denny, please, to present this one?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is a standard report, members, that comes through each December in advance of the new municipal year. It has been circulated to officers and members for comment previously, so hopefully nothing has been identified, but I am happy to take any sort of comments or questions if there are any queries at all. Thank you.
So do I have any questions? No. So the recommendation is that we adopt the programme of meetings for 2021/22 as presented. Can I have a proposer, please? Proposed by Councillor Heinrich and seconded by Councillor Fredericks. Thank you. So Matt, we need to vote on that.
Yep, just bringing up the poll. Can I just double check again that all present members have voted? I think we might be 1 or 2 down on the numbers.
Yeah, everybody voted.
Okay, I have 34 in favour, 0 against and 0 abstentions.
So that's 100% in favour. Thank you. So that takes us over the page in the agenda to item 13, which is community governance reviews. And I think that's going to be the Chief Executive, Mr. Blatch.
Thank you, Chairman. As part of the local government boundary review of North Norfolk District Council conducted in 2017, a small number of historical parish boundary anomalies or misplaced properties were identified, which can only be corrected through a formal process of community governance reviews. There are 14 of those detailed in the report before you this evening. Further, there are 3 locations in the district where, based on historic rates of development, the provision of major infrastructure and changing land use or community identities, parish boundaries would now appear anomalous and could benefit from some form of revision to better reflect community identities and the use of local services and facilities, and therefore parish precepts. One of those, I believe, is relatively uncontentious, and it's the boundary between West Rainham and Hellhoughton within the footprint of the former RAF West Rainham site. And there are two which arguably might be more contentious or generate a wider degree of public interest, such as the Sandy Lane area of Fakenham within the boundary of the Fakenham bypass. That street, essentially the western part of that street, sits within the Sculthorpe parish. And similarly, a number of properties off the Norwich Road to the south of Cromer, which sit within the Northreps parish, as detailed within the report. Finally, we've received this request from Pudding, Norton and Hempton parish councils to formally merge those parish councils through the constitution of a new parish council, which would similarly require a community governance review. Each of these proposals require a process of statutory consultation across 2 stages lasting approximately 9 months. The members are therefore asked this evening to approve the process of community governance reviews as detailed in the report, with final proposals being presented back to Council in the autumn of 2021, with any new boundaries being effective for the purposes of council tax precepts and elections from April 2022. The maps showing these proposed changes are detailed within the public part of this report. There is exempt appendices showing individual property details and council tax precepts for members' information in the context of your wider understanding, but this evening's report just seeks your authority to proceed with the community governance review consultation process during the first part of 2021. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are members being asked to kickstart this process, which obviously takes some time. So it's a matter of us starting this process, which will then be reported back in late 2021. Are there any questions? Yes, I have Councillor Tom Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I have just a couple of questions. Not that I'm paranoid, but quite a few of these are all within my ward, Sandy Lane and Fakenham and so on. But what did so that's fair enough. But on page 116, which is the Little Walsingham, Great Walsingham, I don't quite understand when it says they appear to fall within Little Walsingham. They're currently paying council tax in the electoral register, and Great Walsingham so seeks to remedy this because there's actually only one polling station there, which is the village hall in Walsingham, because it's the Great Walsingham, Little Walsingham are simply wards of the one parish. So it seems a rather sort of unnecessary complication when it won't make any difference to them at all. And the other thing I was curious about was we have part 2 papers, purple papers. Now, I'd have thought the information contained in them was actually relevant and should be shared with the people there, because it's not any information that can't be found elsewhere if any people are minded to it. So I'm just curious to know why that information, which may affect the way people vote when they're or reply when they're consulted, the residents, the people that are actually personally involved, why that isn't being made available to them from the outset. Thank you.
I'm happy to say that. In respect to the first point, there is no difference in the precept for Walsingham Parish, but the Great and Little Walsingham wards do have a number of parish councillors according to that area, and this seeks to regularise that by making that one property within the relevant parish ward rather than being divided between the 2 parish wards. In respect of the purple papers, this provided for information this evening for members' information and context. The consultation will involve detailed consultation with the relevant parish councils and written communication with each householder to advise them of the nature of the proposals that are being put forward to change the parish boundary and how that would affect them. And that's part of the 2-stage consultation process, which I referred to in my opening comments. I hope that's helpful.
That's very helpful. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Have I got anybody else?
I believe Councillor Housden has his hand up.
Councillor Housden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I just direct you to page 113? The area of solar farm that's now going to come into West Raynham currently, I believe, sits in the Weasenham parish. Is that correct?
No, it sits in the Hellhoughton parish. All of the proposals are within North Norfolk. There are no changes to any district boundary. This is the northern part of the solar farm, and at the moment, the northern part of the former airfield runway area, which the solar farm is on page 113, and the former airmen's houses to the north of the airbase are in the Hellhoughton parish. This proposal suggests that they all sit within the single parish of West Raynham. There are no residential properties affected by the solar farm proposal. There are approximately 110 properties, I believe, that are affected by the proposal as detailed on page 112.
That's fine, thank you. I'm not quite sure if this question is totally relevant. It was just that the benefit the solar farm feeds back into the three communities, which is Weasenham, Hellhoughton and West Raynham. I didn't know whether that would be affected by these proposals at all.
Sorry, I'm not familiar with any such agreement, but I don't believe that would change the distribution of any community benefit that is derived from the solar farm.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Housden. Do I have anybody else? I've nobody on my screen, but
I see no further hands raised.
Who? Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I see no further hands raised.
Right. Thank you very much indeed. So, do I have a proposer and a seconder? Proposed by Councillor Toy. No, Councillor Rest. Sorry. And a seconder.
Councillor Toy does have his hand raised.
Right. Thank you very much. Councillor Toy is the seconder. So we put this to the vote, Matt, please.
Okay, I'll just ask again that everyone's had the opportunity to vote. Okay, so that's 31 in favour, 1 abstention, 1 against and 3 abstentions.
Thank you. So that recommendation is passed. Thank you. That takes us on to item 14, questions received from members. I have none. Opposition business, I have none. And that takes us on to notice of motion. Motion is proposed by Councillor Baker and seconded by Councillor Cushing, but I have been notified of a proposed amendment to agenda item 16, which, if supported by the proposer and seconder, i.e. Councillor Baker and Councillor Cushing, could become part of the substantive motion and would save us having to vote round on an amendment. Now, has everybody had that proposed amendment? It's an addition to what is there, basically to get support from government and look at the economics of it. Councillor Baker, Councillor Cushing, are you happy to accept that?
I am happy to accept that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Cushing?
Yes, I'm happy to accept it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are now looking at the motion as per the amendment from Councillor Shires and Councillor Seward. So, would you like to present that, please? I think it's appropriate if Councillor Baker and Councillor Cushing present it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. more than happy to present the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Baker.
Thank you. This motion is brought to the Council this evening to firstly recognise the invaluable contribution of our care professionals and what they have made throughout the pandemic. Now, I would imagine that everyone in the Council may know someone or have their own story where a care professional has supported their family or their friends, whether it's parents, grandparents needing help, or wider friends or family. Our social care workforce has risen to the challenge this year like no other year, working tirelessly throughout. But actually, they do this day in, day out. And that is why this motion is much more than just recognition today, because what it does is it aims to drive ambitious and tangible benefits to those who work in the health and social care workforce across Norfolk and Suffolk. This is a huge workforce of around 26 or 27,000 people. What this motion recognises is the importance of the Developing Skills in Health and Social Care project run across Norfolk and Suffolk. The project gives our amazing social care workforce access to a range of higher qualifications delivered by local partners and a new mentoring service supporting employees directly to help social care staff with further career progression and the opportunity to gain even further skills and qualifications. So the question is, Mr. Chairman, why are we doing this? Well, because frankly, in my view, our carers are not given the recognition for the hugely valuable work that they do. And what I'd like this motion to do is show that this council wants to turn that tide. It wants to recognise that social care is a high status, high skill career that enables our care professionals to gain and obtain more skills within their career. Now, next year, the social care reforms, in my view, will be one of the most important pieces of legislation that the government will reform. And I think it's even more important to our residents across North Norfolk, given the demographics that we have, and also that again, throughout the country, we have a shortage of caregivers. I want that to change. And you start doing that by valuing this profession, strengthening the workforce with further skills, training, and mentoring. If we invest in our brilliant carers and social care workforce, that alone will benefit not just our caregivers, receivers, but also the wider health service too. So having met with the leader and the chief executive, both were supportive of this motion, felt that it could be fulfilled within the council's resources. And I hope that this evening that you will be able to support the motion too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Cushing, would you like to add anything?
I reserve my right to speak at the end if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you indeed. I think it would be appropriate if Councillor Shires and Councillor Seward added to that. Councillor Shires.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am delighted to see some investment in our health and social care professionals. We have amazing people across the district who, you know, show up day in and day out for. I don't ever feel that they will be paid enough for the work that they do, for the care that they give, and for the amount of love and attention they give to residents in North Norfolk. It's a dedicated profession. So I would like to thank everyone in North Norfolk who turns up day in, day out and works in health and social care. Thank you very much. I am delighted to see that the DWP has entered into this contract with Norfolk County Council, and that this contract is worth 7.58 million. That's a substantial investment in health and social care. I'm delighted that half of that funding has come from the European Union European Social Fund as a further investment. So that is a total of £7.58 million being invested into health and social care in Norfolk and Suffolk. The main point for the amendment that I wanted to bring was that this funding for the qualifications is only open to those who are paid and employed to care. When we look at the Health Watch data for Norfolk in 2015, across the county, there are 99,419 unpaid carers. These are people who care and don't get paid for it, and we should be investing in them. When you look at the last Norfolk County Council figures of 2011, 12.2% of the North Norfolk population are unpaid carers. That is the highest in the county and higher than the national average. We really, really need to push for investment into those who are unpaid, not only because many of them are family members and friends, but many of them are doing jobs that they are not supported in having the right knowledge to be able to do them. And many of the carers that I have spoken to, whether or not they're caring for relatives who are suffering with mental health or children who are suffering with their health, they are not offered the skills that they need to support their relatives properly whilst they're waiting for further care. So I am grateful for Councillor Baker and Councillor Cushing for accepting the amendment so readily, and I fully support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Shires. Councillor Seward.
Thank you, Chairman. In the light of the amendments being accepted, I'll let the debate proceed. I have nothing further to add.
Thank you indeed. Right, I have Councillor Spagnola. I think you've got your hand up here.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chair. As an unpaid carer, this really caught my eye. I completely support the motion, but I would like to just echo some of what Councillor Shires has mentioned. As an unpaid carer, I have 2 disabled children. I am paid £67.25 a week towards my care of my children. That's one child, sorry, just one child, because you can only claim it once per disabled person, family member, etc. I sat down last night and worked out that came to less than 20p an hour to look after my children. I am not a qualified anything to do with autism. One of my children's autistic, the other one, both children autistic. One's got mental health issues, anxiety issues, etc. I'm not trained to do this. I'm just the mum. Mums know best, I know, but that's kind of where I'm coming from. So to get under 20p an hour is highly insulting, to be quite honest with you. My children deserve better than that. So this motion, although I agree completely and I back it fully, I do think that we've got a lot more work to do with regard to unpaid carers as well as paid carers. And just to add on top of that, my husband is actually a care worker. I read this to him earlier just to find out what he thought about this. He said, please give us more than minimum wage, then we might be okay. We might want to go and learn more and do more and put more into this. But working 40 hours at minimum wage, looking after people with learning disabilities, he really doesn't feel that he wants to then go and progress himself because he doesn't feel valued. And I think that's something else that needs to be pointed out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spagnola. Do I have anybody else?
See, Councillor Millership would like to speak.
Yeah, Councillor Millership.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members. I support the principle of the motion. As an unpaid carer myself, I would like to share my thoughts on the subject with you. Firstly, the project only applies to existing employed carers. Surely, with our ageing community, we need to encourage more people to see the role of carer as a profession to be proud of and to want to be part of a greatly appreciated sector of our county's health and social care system. As a teenager, I supported a family member with her alcoholism with the help of Al-Anon. In more recent times, I cared for my mother-in-law who had vascular dementia. We moved her into our home and cared for her for 3.5 years, 24/7 with hardly any support. Within the last 18 months, I helped nurse my father at home. He had prostate and bone cancer. I administered his controlled drugs. I addressed his personal care issues. I supported him with his own mental health. as he was the person receiving palliative care, which I found extremely hard as his daughter. I now have a mother with Alzheimer's, which has too many daily implications to list here tonight. I oversee the care of my brother, who has Asperger's, mental health needs, kidney failure and severe diabetes. Yet again, too many implications to list here tonight. I have no training to help me address these ailments and conditions my family have had, and some continue to have. Luckily, I'm able to source information from the NHS and social services when needed. Yes, I receive a carer's allowance for one of them, which is £67.25 a week. If you earn more than £128 a week after tax and national insurance, you lose your carer's allowance, so having a better job is a problem. I'm a wife, a mother, a daughter, a sister, the list goes on. I chair my parish council. I'm one of the district councillors for Stalham. So as you can see, my life is very full with all its demands and joys. I'm not asking for praise or sympathy for my roles, just recognition for all unpaid carers. We need support and training. We need to find out who these silent carers are in our community. We need to show them that we are there for them as a district council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Millership. Do I have anybody else?
We have Councillor Withington and Councillor Rest.
All right, thank you. Councillor Withington.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. As has been said before, I think we're all grateful that this has been brought forward. And, you know, it's an area which has largely been ignored up until now, both by county and government. So it's, you know, fantastic that we're now talking about it. However, there's always a however, isn't there? What disappoints me is that this scheme fails to bring the level of improvement up significantly for our care workers, in that it's only offering level 2 GCSE level training, and actually we need to be extending all aspects through the care sector and really giving that opportunity that, as Councillor Baker said, it can become and be seen as a career, and that way we're going to attract people into it. It also is a very narrow range of opportunity, unlike a lot of the other colleges around the country who are offering similar courses. There's a far greater range of choices available, and this one, which really surprisingly doesn't even mention diabetes, which for North Norfolk is a huge area, both because of our demographic of older people, but for some reason in Norfolk we have a higher percentage of children with diabetes as well than the rest of the country. So I'm really pleased that this funding is in place. I think it's important that we ensure that we get an appropriate level of funding from county or wherever it's deemed necessary to cover that officer time, because I really hope that NNDC would then be able to focus on not just this narrow aspect of this particular project, but actually ensure that we could get really high level training for some of our carers, and, as has been so eloquently put, for our unpaid carers as well, who desperately, when you talk about 99,000 unpaid carers in Norfolk, I think you said 27,000 carers, Councillor Baker, in North Norfolk. Well, 99,000 across Norfolk, that means there's got to be at least another, yeah, there must be at least another 30,000 unpaid carers in North Norfolk, I would imagine, of which even on this council you can see the representation. I know of 5 of us who are doing caring. So it's a huge part of North Norfolk life. So I really do hope that this can be extended and taken on with the amendments, and therefore I really happy to propose to accept the amendment and go with this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Withington. Councillor John Rest, please.
Thank you, Chairman. My apologies. I withdraw my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have anybody else?
Councillor Kershaw.
Councillor Kershaw.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, may I say I was very touched by Councillor Spagnolo and Millership's contribution, and I don't know how they do it, but there we are. My concern is this is a funding that's been funded by the EU and councils 50-50. And I believe the EU funding is due to be withdrawn in 2022. I would like to be reassured that the government will continue the funding. And I'd like that on record. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kershaw. Anybody else?
Councillor Tom Fitzpatrick and Councillor Pearce.
Right, thank you. Just so happens neither of them are on my screen. Councillor Tom Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, thanks. I support this motion. I'll be voting in favour of it as amended. And I'd like to thank Councillors Baker and Councillor Cushing for bringing it forward. I think it's very germane to North Norfolk, and I will be voting in favour. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Councillor Pearce.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Again, I will be fully supporting it, and I've also listened to the Liberal people that have given their views and their life experiences. And at the end of the day, it's very easy to criticise a proposal when it's in its initial stages. I think that Councillor Baker and Councillor Cushing has done very well to bring this forward and second it. Yes, they put a benchmark down, and until this proposal was put forward, we didn't have that benchmark. So, you know, I'm very grateful for them to do it. And if, as I find, and I see before me this evening, that Liberal councillors have supported it as well, even with an amendment, which is good. That shows another small step forward. So let's hope on this occasion that we can all really work together and get where we want to get. It's not going to be an easy situation. It's not going to be a quick step, but we've made valuable inroads. And I thank both the people for bringing that motion forward this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Councillor Fredericks.
I believe we have Councillor Vincent Fitzpatrick as well.
Oh,
right.
sorry, am I jumping the gun? No?
I don't know which was first.
Oh, well, I'll speak then, shall I? As well as the unpaid carers, I just want to pay tribute to something that shouldn't actually be happening, and that's the young carers. We're a first world country, and children are having to care for their parents. They have to take on that role as a carer rather than a child. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vincent Fitzpatrick, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hopefully the sound levels are gone and people can hear me. I'd just like to say I'm fully supportive of this motion, and I think it is great to bring this to the strategic level of NNDC, and I think it is moving us forward in the correct direction. So again, I'd like to thank councillors Baker and Cushing for moving this motion to start with, and say I'll be fully supportive. Thank you.
Thank you indeed. Anybody else? I can't see anybody.
Councillor Grove-Jones.
Councillor Grove-Jones.
Just to follow up with Councillor Frederick's point, there are children as young as 10 who are caring for adults, and they are sacrificing their schooling, they're sacrificing their childhood, their friendships. They're getting very little, if any, support, and I am appalled that we haven't actually addressed this. I know there are charities that are trying to help these children, but it's very difficult. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Grove-Jones. Anybody else before we move on?
I've seen
Councillor
Sarah
Butikover,
Butikover.
sorry.
Yeah.
I just think we can all see the importance of this motion that's been brought tonight. I think we will all work together to make sure that we build on this and take it further, because we know our residents, and sadly we've got a lot of people in this category that need this help and support. And I think, as Councillor Baker said, it is important those people get the recognition that they deserve and the help and support to take their careers further. But I think we've also heard tonight about those others. And I think when councillors are moved like they have been this evening, it shows us just how important this is. So thank you to both of you for bringing it, and for Lucy and Eric for supporting it as well.
Thank you, Councillor Butikova. If I have nobody else, I'll move to Councillor Cushing for the final word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll keep this brief. First of all, I'd like to thank all councillors for their contribution this evening. I can't think of a motion since I've been a member of the council that where councillors demonstrated such a level of passion for what is being proposed. I certainly take on board that there's an enormous amount to be done in this area. This motion focuses on one aspect of it, but at least it is something which is going to help progress. Put in context, there at the moment, I understand, are something like 1.65 million people working in paid adult social care in the UK, and that's predicted to increase to just under 2.2 million by 2035. So it's an increase of 32%, which is over 500,000 people. In Norfolk alone, as Councillor Baker mentioned, there are 26,000 people in paid local adult social care. Of those, currently there are 1,600 vacancies, and turnover in those roles is a key issue at the moment. It's at 31.5% a year, which equates, I think, a total of about something like well over 7,000 leavers, of those 7,000, over a third do not go back into the care system. So that's 1,000 people. Training is certainly going to help people do those. Of those 26,000, currently only just over 41% have a qualification. I'm sure all of us understand that training itself, I think, was mentioned in a number of the speeches given, certainly I believe by Councillors Shire, Spagnola and Whittington, mentioned that training would help. I think Councillor Spagnola said that it certainly help incentivise her husband doing that. Training increases morale, it increases confidence, competence, it enables career progression, and also it reduces turnover as well. So I'm really pleased to see the overall support we've had for this non-partisan motion this evening, and I certainly hope all members will be voting for it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cushing. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, as Councillor Cushing has just said, rarely have I seen council motions unite people. I think, first of all, I brought this motion to everybody because I wanted it to be a step. I wanted it to be a step in the right direction. And I think it is. And I meant what I said when I started this. I think the government has a lot of challenges in front of it, but I truly believe that our social care reforms and what we do to change the tide so that carers are recognised for the high status, the high professional career that they give to people. How can anybody say that somebody caring for someone with dementia or autism or end of life care is not the most high skill patient job that you can have? And this is why I'm really committed, not in necessarily my role in front of you this evening, but in my parliamentary role, when we get to this social care reforms, that we can push this forward and make it better. We know that 20 years ago, it's quite feasible to say that nursing wasn't held in the same high degree status that it is today. Now it's a degree level qualification. We clapped for our nurses absolutely rightly. And I want to one day recognise that our carers are looked at and viewed in exactly the same way. This evening, the stories that we have heard from incredibly moving. Unpaid carers, that is absolutely a signal that to take that back, that is an area that needs to be dealt with. I say to Councillor Spagnola's husband, this is exactly why we brought this motion here this evening, because I don't want him going to work and feeling that his status and his career is not absolutely at the top of the tree. He is keeping people in comfort, people that have worked all their lives in this country, and it is a high status, high professional career. To Councillor Grove Jones, who talked about young carers, I've spoken in Parliament earlier on the year. There are 52 young carers in the Holt area. I'm going to correct you. They're not 10 years old. There's children who are 5 years old. And that is wrong. And we need to do more about that as well. So these are all great things that I'm so glad that we have come to total agreement on this. And I'm just very, very pleased that the council will work with this whole scheme. And let's make sure that when we look back in a year or so's time, that we can say to carers across North Norfolk, we have invested in them and given them a very good future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Yes, let's take this as a first step in what undoubtedly will be a very complicated process, but it is a first step. So can we go to the vote, please? Matt, to vote for the motion.
Just confirm that everyone's had the opportunity to vote again.
I've had nothing come up. Right, have now. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Okay,
So,
yeah, we
as
have.
I'm sure we all expected, that is passed unanimously. Right. Thank you very much. I don't think we have anything to exclude the press and the public, so we're coming to the end of the meeting. I would like to say thank you to all the staff and all the members. We've all had a most extraordinary and most difficult year, but everybody I've met in the council, including members and officers, have done their utmost to live with it as far as we possibly can. So I'd like to thank everybody, and I hope you have as happy a Christmas as you can. I sometimes remind myself that happiness is in your head, but a safe Christmas is what's important. So thank you very much indeed. And before we finish, I'm going to hand over to the leader, Councillor Butikova, who'd also like to say a few words. So happy Christmas, keep safe. Councillor Butikova.
I'd just like to wish every member a very happy Christmas. Please be careful, please be safe, and let's hope that 2021 is, as I said earlier, kinder to us all. Thank you, and thank you to all our staff too, who have been absolutely outstanding this year. Happy Christmas, everyone.
See you next week or in the new year.